Hi everyone, Nemo here. Welcome back to a midweek show, because when do we ever do that? I'm here again with the Brit Vengers because we need to talk specifically about Wendy Nelson's talk from the recent European broadcast. It merits an episode of its own, so here they all are, and we're going to talk about it. Hey everyone, unmute yourselves so we can all hear you. Perfect. Hi.
Hello.
You saw them days ago, just days ago, so we really don't need to introduce them again. What we are going to do is go through the talk blow by blow, and there'll be stopping points. We'll come off, we'll talk about it. Because this needs to be on the internet in its entirety, and this is the only way we can do it without the lawyers coming after us. So, without further ado, let's put it out there.
Our dear brothers and sisters of Europe, how we love you. From Sweden to Austria, from Romania to Wales, we have loved meeting with so many of you over the years. You are in our hearts forever. All the lands of Europe call to us, not just the ones we have visited, nor only the lands of our ancestors, which for me include Switzerland, Scotland, and England. Rather, every land in this grand Europe area, which I'm told includes 48 countries, beckons us. No doubt it is, because the blood of Israel is there. How grateful we are to be with Elder and Sister Bednar, whom we love.
Chat's time already, everyone. Isn't it great that she just started out by listing where her ancestors are from, and so she's told, letting us know that there's so many areas in Europe. How do you all feel about just the first moments of what she says? It's just a quick one.
No words.
We're straight in there with we're straight in there with the racism. The blood of Israel is going to be a theme here, which will take off and soar. And
Great point.
President Nelson also did that himself, so that's something to start looking out for already.
Okay.
The blood of Israel is here.
Cool. Jane?
Okay, so I want to kick off with just Wendy feelings. As a whole, this whole broadcast had women leadership speaking to us, which is we don't always get that, so it's worth keeping it in mind. But we have a reaction when Wendy starts speaking. She doesn't have to be saying anything. And I want to talk about that initial Wendy stuff, because especially the comments, we're going to find these kind of things will come up in the comments. A quick troll through the internet, just the quick sort of highlights. I'm gonna just quickly read out in the space of a few minutes a few of the things that get said when Wendy's name comes up. She's not a prophet. She doesn't write this talk herself. She's being made an example of. She's an abused woman. She's deluded. She's a puppet. Wendy is unbalanced. She's nuts. She's crazy. She's controlling. She's a manipulator. The amount of references to Wendy Nelson's sex life and being unmarried, until she was an older woman, is appalling. Some of the horrible things that get said about Wendy, and highly sexualized, talking about why she's married to the prophet. She's only in it for the power. She's power grabbing. She's a bully. She makes demands. She has an ego. Constant comparisons to the prophet's first wife, and she has the audacity somehow, I'm not quite sure how, to big herself up. I really want to just mention the amount of misogynistic comments that get brought into the equation as soon as Wendy is around. It's just worth acknowledging. So I'm happy that we're having a discussion that's about the content of Wendy's talk, and rather than these horrible things that get said.
Absolutely. Julian, please.
Just on that point, though, it'd be interesting to see whether things would be any different if, obviously, it's great to see an equal amount of men and women speaking at a meeting like this. It's just a shame that the women are there as an appendage to their husbands. It'd be great if we had a meeting like that with an equal number of men and women speaking, but the women were there kind of in their own right. If that makes sense. maybe. Obviously, it's not okay. I'm not excusing it in any way. I just think it'd be interesting to see if you had those same comments if it wasn't Wendy Nelson.
I had the really lovely opportunity to go on 21st Century Saints podcast a little while back and talk about the Bonnie H. Corden fireside that she did, and that was very interesting because that was a fireside for sisters, and I was kind of I was there as the priesthood holder to oversee the meeting and make sure that all ran smoothly. But it was incredible to see how these women can flourish in a meeting designed for women, and to see her just as a woman speaking to women from that position rather than as an appendage to her husband. That was it. You see them in a different light, and I wonder whether we just don't necessarily have the vocabulary or the experience with dealing with these women as individuals and not just as appendages to their husbands. Whether maybe that plays a factor into how these women get spoken about. I'm really liking this hands up thing. We will keep this going. PD's got a point, and then we're going to move on to the next clip.
I was just going to say that the blood of Israel is not in Europe the way they think it's in Europe.
Right.
Because after Wendy and Rusty's talk, where they spoke a lot about how Europe, how the blood of Israel in Europe was going to change everything. It's really not. Europeans really are a good mix of, East Asia and different areas. So
I think we have to remember, with today being Holocaust Day, that a lot of Israel's blood has had to leave Europe over the past 100 years. So we have this idea in Mormonism that because we get adopted into House of Israel, we get to lay claim to some of that identity. And without getting dragged into that, I don't want to.
We're not adopted into it, though, are we?
No. What are we?
In the patriarchal blessing, you're literally the lineage of that House of Israel.
Yeah.
Which fits with a young Earth creationist kind of view.
That's a good point. Right, let's move to the next clip. Let's carry on.
Today I'd like to talk with you in Europe about truth and prophets. In the literary folktale, The Emperor's New Clothes, by Danish author Hans Christian Andersen, swindlers convince the emperor that the new attire they made for him is of the most exquisite pattern, material, and colors. They emphasize that anyone who cannot see the extraordinary clothing is unworthy of his office or simply stupid. Everyone is duped by the charlatans, even the emperor's most trusted officials. All the townspeople join in the chorus telling the emperor how magnificent he looks as he proudly parades in front of them. No one wants to be thought of as stupid. However, one child boldly proclaims, "The emperor has no clothes on." And that was the truth.
And we're back. Julian, please.
Yes, please.
Yeah.
I don't know about you, but I think it's hard to listen to that with a straight face, isn't it?
Yeah.
It's just so ironic. It is so ironic. And I think it's important to say that I am of the camp, I know not everybody is going to agree with me on this, but I'm of the camp that these people are generally good people that are not trying to swindle anybody. They really believe that it is what they say it is and that they are what they say they are. I really do believe that. But if you look at the story of the Emperor's New Clothes, what you've got is a very proud king or emperor who has everybody telling him how wonderful he looks, how great and important he is, and it takes somebody to kind of point out that no, that's not how it is. You're naked or whatever. It's just so ironic. It's so ironic because you've got what we've got are let's say 15 people. Just to kind of throw widen it out, 15 people who are told that they are God's mouthpieces on the earth, and I can't swear, can I? And it's just nonsense. It's nonsense. And as soon, you can, if you want to know that the church, whether the church is true or not, if you want to look at that kind of idea, there are so many ways that you can go into it. You can look at the history, you can look at the theology.
Oh, we lost Julian.
Yeah,
We lost them the other night as well. Jane, please fill in the gap while we wait for Julian to come back.
Yeah, just really quickly, one of the biggest problems that we have when we attend church is the feeling of where everyone's just pretending. We're not being honest, we're not being real. And so when, as soon as we start talking about the emperor's new clothes, it's because we in the audience are shouting that the emperor has no clothes. Why are we all pretending this? It was just bizarre. I really want to laugh at, we were all having a giggle in the group chat that, are we seriously going down this road? No tongue in cheek intended at all. She was 100%, on track with that. It wasn't even hypocrisy. It was just so short-sighted. We are asking for a more real, vulnerable human church experience. And she's telling us it was just weird. It was just weird, right?
So weird. Yeah, it was weird. Julian, are you back?
I am, yeah.
Continue with the rant, please.
My point really is just that, if you want evidence that the church isn't what it says it is, just watch General Conference and try and suggest that these people are inspired or God's mouthpieces, because it's just nothing. They've got nothing to offer us at all. That's what's been so, I haven't been to church for quite some time now, but I've got a lot of people that I care about that do go, and I see these broadcasts and I just feel sorry for them. I just think you're being so let down by this drivel. So yeah, just massively ironic.
Absolutely. Right, let's move on to the next bit, because there's some good stuff up ahead.
Today it can be difficult to know who speaks the truth. But my testimony is that prophets of God always speak the truth. While many in the world's great and spacious building convincingly profess that evil is good and good is evil, prophets speak the truth. While many tout and even celebrate new approaches to and rationale for breaking God's commandments, prophets speak the truth. One of the distinctive features of the Savior's restored church is the presence of prophets. Today we sustain 15 men in the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints as prophets, seers, and revelators. We are blessed in this devotional to be taught by 2 of these prophets. Prophets are called by the Lord to do difficult things, to speak unpopular things, not smooth things, as Isaiah wrote. The Lord's prophets can see things we don't see and hear things we cannot. The Lord speaks to his prophets, instructing them what to say and do that will bless and protect all of God's children. Therefore, as we choose to follow the prophets, we will be blessed spiritually and temporally.
There's a lot there. Peter, lead us out, and then we'll go to Alana.
Oh, this triggers me so much, because there's so many specific things that the scriptures and our religions say are true that the current leadership directly oppose. They're flipping the script to make good evil and evil bad, as it was. So they, for example, the scriptures, Jesus said in the scriptures that you must not call your leaders by titles. You can't call them president or elder or teacher, but we make that a religious virtue, and she literally just did it. They're prophets, seers, and revelators. He said you cannot put these people at the head of the table at banquets or on a stand or in special privileged seating in the church, and we make this the absolute thing. We build great and spacious buildings like the conference center to literally enthrone the hierarchies of their power. And the key things Jesus taught about prioritizing the marginalized. They teach that everything we must prioritize in the church is the nuclear families having a predictable life in the safe fold, and everyone else we mustn't talk about and we must keep them out because they're a threat. Whereas Jesus flipped that script and said they're the ones your religion should be about. And finally, Jesus said, you give your money to the poor. These people teach repeatedly and have done for decades. You take the money from the poor and you give it to the American stock market secretly, now no longer secretly, $140 billion in stocks and shares in one of their funds, and you give it to them. They take a huge salary, and you give it to the white middle class Americans to subsidize their university at the Brigham Young universities. And they teach that the destitute must pay tithing before feeding their own children. So who is it teaching that evil is good and good is evil? It's them.
Great point.
I mean,
Great
just
point.
demonstrably.
Jane, Alana, then Jane.
Yeah, I won't be too long. I remember, obviously, I had family plans, so I didn't watch it till a later time, but I just remember as she kept saying, prophets speak the truth, prophets speak the truth. In my mind, I'm thinking, who are you trying to convince here?
Yes.
Us or you, but I also think, I know we always go back to people saying, that we don't think that they intentionally necessarily go to tell lies, but I just feel like, how can you say that with a straight face? How can you honestly say prophets speak the truth standing there in front of everyone when there's evidence to back up that they don't always speak the truth? It's been proven time and time again by yourself, by articles, that things they say are false. Now, I'm not here to say whether they intentionally lie or they don't. In my opinion, I believe they know what they're doing. That's just my personal view. But I just think, how can you honestly stand there and say prophets speak the truth when we know there is evidence that proves otherwise?
Thank you. Jane, then Julian, please.
I find it really difficult to believe that Wendy Nelson would believe that prophets lie. I have a really hard time with it. What I have been able to, evidence has shown that there is a pattern of not being completely honest. That I have to figure out what the hell are you going to do with that, Jane? But I don't think it's as simple as they know they're lying. But my issue is with prophets always speak the truth. She was very, she speaks well. She knows how she emphasizes that. And I want to just give a shout out on TikTok to, I believe it's A Whole New World on TikTok, if anyone is following that channel. But so insightful. Points out the 1967 book, I think it was, The Black Hammer. This is one illustration. The Black Hammer is incredibly problematic, offensive in every way. And our prophet, Ezra T. Benson, approved his talk to be used as the foreword in this book. Now, this book is used still today by far-right extremists to prop up their arguments, and by members of the church who are, have sort of radical views about ethnicity and all of those sort of problematic things. Can I just, and I don't think I do this often. No, absolutely not. If this is not truth, this is not acceptable, and this must be repudiated. And I think I want to live in a church. I want to live in a world and be a member of a church where they can say these things. If the kind of truth I want to hear is that we made mistakes, that the priesthood ban was a mistake. I want to hear about the fact that LGBTQ youth are suicidal after they attend church on a Sunday. Those are the truths that I'm looking for. So you're silent when I need to hear you. And then we've got crap like this being still churned out. At some point, we have to talk about when we haven't been truthful. It is so important.
Yes, agreed. Julian, and then we'll move to the next clip.
the problem with your point there, though, Jane, is where your point began. The idea that they believe that what they're saying is true. Yes, we'd all love to hear them apologise for these things that we know to be wrong, but they don't believe that they're wrong. Because they can't be wrong, because the prophet said them, and that's it. Kind of goes full circle, doesn't it? That's not what I wanted to say. I wanted to kind of go along with what Alana was saying about the whole this insistence, and it just made me think of. Are any of you Game of Thrones fans? No,
Well, we've got
PD.
yes.
No, it's not. It's not PG.
No, we've got to be secret Game of Thrones. I've never watched it, but I've heard that. So there's a scene in Game of Thrones. Anyone that's seen it will know what I'm talking about here. There's a scene where you've got the young King Joffrey, who's a bit of a tyrant, in a meeting with his grandfather, who is the real power here, and Joffrey keeps saying, "I am the king. I am the king. I am the king." And eventually, his grandfather says, "No, no real king has to tell everybody that they are the king." And it's the same thing, isn't it? These people were really speaking the truth. Haven't we got the Holy Ghost to tell us when things are true? So we don't need someone telling us, "Oh, just reminding you, we are speaking the truth. Everything that we say is true." The prophet always speaks it. We already know because the Holy Ghost is telling us that, isn't it? And so it does. Yeah. It comes across as a snake oil salesman.
But that to me all comes back to, just as we move into the next part, it all comes back to the idea that these talks get taken down after 24 hours. Some little page of an English ward posted it, and someone put in the comments of my video, "Oh, it's on this page, go and have a look at it." It's been taken down. It's in other places. I'm sure it will soon be taken down. The only place that these words get to survive is in videos like this. Why? If you're a prophet, if you speak for God, not to God, if you speak for God, then these words should not have a problem existing in the public sphere indefinitely. They shouldn't.
I said that to Jane the other day.
Yeah, let's move on.
The media, social and otherwise, is filled to overflowing with ideas that are contrary to the teachings of prophets. In fact, so much that is offered as truth is just silly.
Just silly.
Much like the emperor's new clothes. However, prophets help us discern specious notions, as well as their intention to trip us up, and basically wreck our lives. So how can we protect ourselves amid the war of words that rages all around us? I suggest we compare anything and everything we read, view, or hear with the teachings of the prophets. If it isn't in harmony, we should run away. The question we can use as a litmus test to discern truth from error and to help us with a multitude of our personal dilemmas, decisions, and questions is, what do the prophets say? Let's start there. Let's use prophetic words as our standard of truth. For this new year, let's put an exclamation mark after every statement from a prophet, and a question mark after everything else we read, see, or hear.
So we have a choice, ladies and gentlemen. We have a choice.
Away.
We're going to go to PD straight away, but the choice we have is, do we want to really deliciously dissect this, knowing that we already did some of it on Sunday, and then basically just have one person each for the next points, because that's all we'll have time for, or what do we want to do? I think your face is saying, "Oh, we want to dive into it." PD, go for it.
I was just going to say, can we compare this to what the prophets have said, and which prophets? You know what I mean? Like every one of them is different. So
yeah,
she said compare it to what the prophets say, but these prophets are there are many voices on many different topics from many different views and rules. They do the old Jeffrey R. Holland thing. We move here, then they move here, then they go there. They're never in the same place twice.
And my channel is dedicated to pointing out the indiscrepancies between what these prophets say. So it's there. The other thing is that she really leans into this us versus them narrative, which in the previous clip she also did. But she talks about how people are out there to basically wreck our lives. She paints that those that aren't her husband are just out there just to wreck our lives. That's their motive. She's ascribing motive and intent to a vast audience of people that she doesn't even know. Who do we have hands up? Sorry. Jane and Julian and then Peter.
I guess I wanted to cover the fact straight off when she talks about the media, social and otherwise. I found that really sinister. We started going down. I think it was apparent to everybody listening. You're talking about, you're sort of lumping it all in together. It felt like an attack on the media by sort of equating all media along with social media and print media, news media. It was just it felt like we were going back to sort of a fake news sort of tirades and that kind of thing. I think it's just, you know, as PD said, it's really important that we are okay with the fact that we're gonna have contradictions. We talk, it's one of the things actually we can do at church on a Sunday is talk about how we all live the gospel a little bit differently. The prophets all have to be exactly you know, quotable, everything all lined up. We insist that our scriptures all line up perfectly. And the beauty is in the complexity and where it doesn't quite line up and we get to wrestle with these things. But I find it really sinister when we start attacking the media. That's, you know, after this talk, sort of 1984, the book, you know, was mentioned a few times in comments, and you can totally see why.
Yeah, I really start to get this feeling. I always get this feeling anytime we tar a large group with a single brush, whether you talk all ex-Mormons, whether you talk all Mormons, whether you talk big sweeping statements like this from a position like hers are dangerous, because she's already talking to an audience of people that have been brought up to think in a binary way. It's one of the things that breeds some of these issues we have with Desnat and other problems in the church, particularly in Utah. We have these very binary ways of thinking, and that is still being propagated. Still. As of last weekend, that's still being propagated. We'll go to Peter, then we'll go to Julian, if that's all right.
And to be honest, you know, this bunch of Desnat teenagers, whatever, are not the real problem. The major thing killing every ward is the people who are that binary and fanatical in our ward, in our gospel doctrine lessons, shutting down the kind of conversations. Now she's given them this mantra, just put a question mark against everything that is not what we're comfortable with hearing from our prophet. And the prophet himself doesn't even practice or believe this. He began his ministry throwing the previous two prophets under the bus as not being truth speakers when they encouraged us to embrace the I'm a Mormon campaign. He specifically said that they and all of us who followed them were giving Satan a victory. So the hypocrisy here is gobsmacking. Just the utter contradiction between what they actually do and what he actually teaches. He began his ministry doing that. They don't believe it. They don't believe that the prophets are infallible. And I just want every massively annoying Latter-day Saint who keeps saying to me, oh, it's okay, we don't believe our prophets are infallible. They're just being human when they did that thing. They need to watch this and then tell me that with a straight face. You know,
Yes.
and President Nelson's talk. I mean, it's got to stop this ludicrous doublethink.
It does. Julian.
I agree with her.
Go on.
I agree. There are real problems in the media, social and otherwise, you know, and a lot of things that are said are just silly. Unfortunately, the guide that she gives to kind of sift between those, you know, what we can rely on and what we can't, just isn't very reliable. And so, you know, we do need critical thinking. You know, more than ever, we're bombarded with information, bombarded with media, and we need to use some critical thinking. And that's not what she's encouraging. She's just saying, well, actually, no, just, you know, question everything other than what we're telling you, which is also a problem because they're not telling us anything. All of these problems that we're facing now, they've got nothing to say about it. They've got nothing to say. Okay, I'll listen to you. Talk to me about climate change.
Yeah.
Yeah, talk to me about that. Talk to me about the polarization of society. Talk to me about all of the real, genuine problems that we're having to kind of connect with at the moment. You're not. So you're not saying anything, and you're not teaching us to think critically about when it comes to the people that are saying something.
2 points there. Shameless self-plug is number one. This Sunday, I'll be having a live chat with the one and only Sam Pinson on critical thinking for Mormons. So we'll be having a chat about that. So don't worry, Julian. You ask, I shall provide. The second point is that I have been paying very close attention to what has been on Russell M. Nelson's social media. What has he been saying that we're meant to be listening to? And today, what we get is him talking about some fragments of the original Book of Mormon manuscript that have been found that were foolishly hidden in a terrible place to try and preserve them by a prophet who should have seen that they wouldn't have been preserved, because the whole thing about Mormonism is that we're good at preserving records for a later date, right? That's the entire sort of Mormon story, is that a prophet hid up records for some other people to find. Turns out we're not great at it, as it goes. So, they were quite badly damaged, weren't they? Let's go to the next clip. And then, PD, I haven't heard from you in a little while, so I want to hear from you on this next one. All right?
Would you like to try that with me for 30 days and see what happens to your heart and mind? You may notice a decrease in the amount of stress you feel as you are able to see through the false philosophies of men that produce a kind of tension and anxiety that can almost immobilize us. What would happen to your level of peace, clarity of thinking, joy, experience of love, and spiritual prosperity if, for 30 days, you started to question everything the world's media and all other sources offer you, and instead prayerfully studied, fully embraced, and lived by every prophetic teaching you could find? What would happen in only 30 days if you chose to follow the prophets with exactness? Prophets testify of Christ. Their sole desire is to help us find and stay on the covenant path that leads back to Him and our Heavenly Father. Now, if we had lived in the days of Nephi, we would have followed him. Not necessarily back to Jerusalem to retrieve the brass plates, but by doing whatever difficult thing the Lord asked us to do. If we'd lived in the days of the prophet Abinadi, we would have followed him, not necessarily into wicked King Noah's court, but by boldly speaking up about those things we know to be true. And now, how will your life be blessed as you choose to follow President Russell M. Nelson, the prophet of God on the earth today, who for 4 years has led the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints under the direction of Jesus Christ himself?
Under the direction of Jesus Christ himself. She goes through to list Book of Mormon prophets. She then talks about her own husband being one of those prophets as well. And she very interestingly invites us to get hold of every prophetic teaching you can find. Follow every prophetic teaching you can find. PD, where do you think that would lead us?
Well, I think I did this as a missionary, and I know where it led me. It led me to the fantasy that one day the church, the prophet would call upon us before the second coming, and I would march into battle in all white, like SAS gear with a white rifle, and this righteous indignation. Because when you block out all civility and critical thinking, and you are entrenched in this gospel of us and them, that's where you go, and you start reading the book of Revelation. You start reading about the prophets that are to die on the streets of Jerusalem, and that's where you get to. And I think that the only way that, well, the end of that road is religious fanaticism, and we know that's not a great place to be.
No,
So,
it's not
but I
what
think
you
as a
want.
missionary, that was where I was going. You know, I was God's army, and literally, if they had told me, you know, we're sending vests and guns and go and stand outside Parliament, I'd have been there. Because when you just read one book consistently for a long time in isolation, you become a little bit, you lose some perspective.
Certainly, you become, what would they say, myopic, maybe.
Yes,
Jane, please.
very.
Well, you're right. Let's extend it further. If the prophets have all been testifying of Jesus Christ, and I have followed that, I can do that. If Joseph Smith, Brigham Young had called me to head off to America, I can imagine I would have probably done that. Would I have continued to follow if I followed the teachings of Brigham Young as it came to relationships? We'll bring polygamy into it here. David O. McKay and Ezra T. Benson. Well, I've got to say, if I was following their teachings in this day and age, I would be a racist. There are things that we can follow. If we're going to start cherry picking things, I can do that. I can accept what is good and leave what is not morally gelling with my own values. If it doesn't line up, then I can reject that. That's what the church teaches me. The Holy Ghost is there to help me to figure that out. But I must be able to reject what is immoral, and immoral things have been taught.
Yeah. She said, every prophetic teaching you can find, not
with
some,
exactness.
Not the ones that feel good to you, with exactness. This is, again, it is, Jane, you're doing what the apologists do in some sense. You're showing what the church could be, what we could have if we were allowed to be more flexible. But this rigidity, to borrow a phrase from Peter Bleakley, gives people testimonies like fired clay that are just smashable, right? Just makes people far too rigid. And on that note, let's go to the next clip. Right. I'm loving this new format, personally.
I'm grateful that my husband is the kind of man who many years before he was called to be an apostle said, quote, I never ask myself, when does the prophet speak as a prophet and when does he not? My interest has been, how can I be more like him? End quote. As his wife, may I offer you several examples of President Nelson's life that you may want to emulate? Number one, he is attentive and alert. Wherever we are, he is always leaning forward to listen to what is being said or sung. This is not to compensate for a hearing problem. He hears just fine. It is an issue with his heart. He wants to take in even more of what is being said. He wants to see and to feel more. Because of his attentiveness, it takes a long time for us to enter or exit an event. Along with his eternal perspective, President Nelson seems to have a wide-angle lens as well as a zoom lens on his eyes to see those in need. So as we exit a meeting, large or small, he will frequently say, who's in the wheelchair? Or, we need to greet that young man, usually one who looks out of place in a chapel. Or he'll tenderly say, oh, there's a little girl. He is irresistibly drawn to little children.
Not good phrasing, is it?
No.
It's not. It's not a good look.
I think coming from me, who understands it probably more than most, I actually was in shock so much that I had to rewind it to re-listen to check I'd picked her wording up correctly. I just think in 2022, knowing everything, that's came out about, abuse in the church and just in general in the world, not a great choice of words, Wendy.
No.
Definitely. It could be very triggering for some people, that kind of talk. Now, I would like to think that that's not at all what she meant or was insinuating, and I'm pretty sure it wasn't. But I think, again, whoever's writing these talks really needs to consider how those words, irresistibly drawn to children, could affect people who have maybe been through things like that. Like, to me, that's quite insinuating a wee bit more than what it should, just in my opinion.
Peter, then Julian.
And I think it's just this disconnection from real life and real language and what people mean by things. It was obviously not intentional, but you just wouldn't say that in this day and age. And it's just another little hint of how they're not part of the normal life. They don't get it. They don't know that there are problems and dangers. And little children are not safe under their regime. Her husband is the man who declared to be a revelation the idea that little children should all be shunned and banned from our covenant path, from our essential ordinances and covenants they banged on about in his talk, if they have a parent who ever cohabited in the same-sex relationship. That's not safe for little children. It's his regime that has watered down the child safeguarding practices in the church to dangerous level. And the only reason they were any good anywhere in the past was that the Boy Scouts of America were in charge of it and at least did proper training. They've had to pull out Boy Scouts of America because of the epic levels of child abuse in it. So, that wasn't even working. And it's just children are not safe in their world. And they're certainly not safe for them being taught critical thinking skills and to unquestioningly be the Lord's battalion following this man and people like her in their worldview. They will crash and burn, as they are. They're leaving the church. As soon as they wake up, they're gone. More than 80%.
Absolutely. They're just disappearing. And another thing, just before we go to Julian, is that we'll show a clip in a minute. It's not just about insinuations of child abuse. He seems to be able to not help but try and indoctrinate children. He teaches them falsehoods. Julian, please.
I was just going to say that I think if you listen to that clip, just that one clip that we've heard there, if you listen to that in isolation, without any cynicism, take all that away, I think he sounds like a really nice guy. And I'm sure that he is. I'm sure that he is a really nice guy. Do you know who else is a really nice guy? Jesus. Yeah. So why are we even talking about emulating the prophet in any other Christian religion, any other Christian faith, denomination, whatever? That would just ring absolute alarm bells. Why are we emulating this leader when we've got Jesus as our example?
Absolutely.
That whole section should be completely well, that and the rest that she does, because she's going to continue about all these ways that we should model ourselves after her husband. It's bizarre and I think really inappropriate.
I agree.
We saw it anywhere else, we would go, hang on, that's
that's all right. Yeah, Jane, please.
So we mentioned last night when we were doing our episode that initially on Sunday, PD had said, we're gonna have to talk about this, right? We're gonna, for the post conference discussion, we're gonna have to, because we were all reacting to it. And I felt like we really, really can't, because it is so triggering and it is something that we need to deal with safely. The internet is going to be filled, let's face it, probably after this with memes based on that little sound clip there, because we all did the same thing. We all reacted in complete horror to this listening, sweet person being described. I mean, it was so innocent, but that was the problem. So that when I've mentioned this to anyone, the reaction has been to, the hands have went up to the face, and no, they didn't really say that. There's not anybody who could sort of excuse the tone deafness in this day and age. So yeah, great. I'll get to see the internet filled with references to child abuse from the prophet. Thanks for that, guys. Please don't do that out there. Just be better. But I think, what Peter is saying is exactly hitting the nail on the head. And I think it's one of the really important takeaways from this conference that, yeah, you're a listening prophet, but you cannot hear what is being said when we are sending our children to church to people who are completely tone deaf. That's what makes us so vulnerable to people who join the church to get access to children. Now, I'm really sorry. I should have, trigger warning to this before I started speaking about it. But I mean, let's be honest. The amount of people who have experienced childhood sexual abuse or adult sexual abuse within the confines of the safe place of our church and not being listened to when it's been reported. I want to believe in that listening prophet, but if you are too afraid to listen to the stories of pain and take action to make sure that our children are being kept safe, then you are not listening. You're just being naive.
Amen.
Well said.
Can I just ask something really quick?
Please do.
So see the people, like, as you're saying, people write their talks. So are these professional people or are they just members of the church? Because what I struggle with, is how can people, if they're professional, if they are, I don't know if they are, writing these talks, not realise that that's a bit iffy in this day and age? Like, I'm struggling to understand if the talks are written, how they can't pull that out and word it differently.
Absolutely, they were all on teleprompter. This wasn't like a few weeks ago when we had the three apostles come over, and it was all kind of off the cuff. They're all chatting and trying to be friendly and down with the kids and talking about old war references to do so. We had teleprompter scripted addresses, and just the entirety of this was allowed to pass. Someone. Yeah. Curtin McConkie, the church PR, whoever it is, looked at this and went, "Yep, yeah, you can say that. That's fine." And it's the same with this video the church also produced, which I just want to show. It's this one here.
President Nelson, would you ever lead anyone astray?
Oh, no.
That's not what prophets do, is it?
Some of them have said, if the president of the church should ever lead people astray, God would take him away. So I like to stay here.
Yeah. There's that. That's how the prophet talks to children. That's what children are brought up being told. He speaks for God. And if he were to ever do anything wrong, God would take him away.
Would kill him. He dropped dead. I mean, what's a thing to say in front of children? Oh my God.
That's a bizarre concept anyway, considering all the previous prophets are dead.
Yeah.
That just doesn't make any sense, does it? Does it have to be by lightning?
Is there a specific way in which they're killed in order to have been taken away by God? They did. You're absolutely right. Okay.
God put Ezra Taft Benson in a coma, and President Hinckley and Onson, instead of handing over power back to the 12 apostles, who would then have appointed, what was his name? The next prophet had the tiny short period in power. He should have been prophet of the church for 6 years. But Hinckley and Onson instead started using a fake signature machine to carry on running the church and give themselves all the power, literally in the name of Ezra Taft Benson, including my mission calls signed by the same machine, while President Benson was incapable of leadership and later in a coma. So this idea that they even follow their own rules about following who the prophet is and following the prophet and respecting any of their own rules and processes is a joke. It's extraordinary once you start learning the real history of how many times they've broken their own rules. They haven't been honest and trustworthy. They've literally faked signatures. And the Boise Rescue emphasised that when, and what they said was an imposter trying to take over after Joseph Smith did that with a fake signature, that was a sign of apostasy. They keep breaking their own rules. They can't keep their stores right on this.
It's a problem. It's a real problem.
Just anyone who's done basic research, watching that thing with the kids, watching Wendy speak, it's just flabbergasting because it's all complete nonsense. And these are the people they have to save. If they really are going to have the church grow in Europe, they've got to talk to the people with those concerns, not become the worst parody of extreme mind control, culty behaviour and messaging that completely confirms all their concerns.
So should we see some more of that?
Faithful members. Oh, let's do it. There's more.
Do it. There's more.
God.
There is more.
Number 2, he is in awe of the laws of God. As he seeks to know and understand more of God's laws, he is in awe of them. And he honors God's laws by being obedient to them. He is enthused by the dependable connection between keeping God's laws and receiving God's blessings. As together my husband and I read from the Book of Mormon every day, we marvel at the many times the Lord's promise is repeated. If ye keep my commandments, ye shall prosper in the land. President Nelson thrills to think of the eternal laws that govern everything from galaxies to the human body. And he has always been eager to learn more. Decades ago, to help him in his professional work as a physician and medical researcher, he worked tirelessly to discover the laws that govern the beating heart. He was inspired by the scripture, "There is a law irrevocably decreed in heaven before the foundations of this world, upon which all blessings are predicated. And when we obtain any blessing from God, it is by obedience to that law upon which it is predicated." So, are there blessings the Lord has in store for you that would be yours if you lived certain laws of God with exactness?
So,
There's
first
the with
off,
exactness again.
First off, hats off to her for the way she handled the word irrevocably. She nailed it. So this is clearly not an off-the-cuff delivery. But yes, there is that exactness. That how great is her husband, because he loves laws and rules, and you should love laws and rules too, particularly the ones he gives you. Thoughts, anyone? Peter, please.
Well, as we've already said, he doesn't follow the laws. One of the most basic laws about his own calling, as we've discussed before, and are raising with our ecclesiastical leaders, is D&C 2065, which says no one should have any calling in the church without being sustained by a vote of the membership first. And he appointed himself as president of the church and reorganized the first presidency 3 months before the membership voted. So they don't follow that rule. They contradict themselves constantly. He's gone from praising a law and then pleading with God to remove it. But it's this thing that this is their religion. They have the Pharisee religion. If you just do the right things the right exact way, the blessing is guaranteed. And Rusty has said this in General Conference. He contradicts himself. He kept saying, the only reason you can't move any mountain in your life of any kind, emotional, health, you're dying of cancer, you're losing your testimony, the only reason is that you're not trying hard enough. You just have to have enough faith and you can move that mountain, and it's guaranteed. But then he said, but actually sometimes God's got his own timetable and he won't give you that blessing yet. But then he went back to the only thing holding you back, these lazy learners and lax disciples, they're just trying hard enough. So this is the ridiculous religion these people believe. We're not machines, and it doesn't work. You can do all the exact obeying you like. My wife Lynn tried it for years. It won't produce the goods, although she did get me. That was worth it. But apart from that, lots of us didn't have it.
Julian,
and then seriously, you're taking it too seriously. When she talks about the laws to exactness, she doesn't mean all that stuff. Just hating guys. That's all it is. That's what she means. Yeah.
It is. It's really,
because there is all the way through that. I feel there was another time, I can't remember. I don't want to go too far back, but there was another time where you oh, that's right, talking about hard things, not smooth things, and there is just those undertones of homophobia there. That's like, oh, that's why we're allowed to kind of continue this homophobic religion, because God's ways are not smooth; they're hard. I didn't like that at all. The other thing I was going to say is I don't like that little tip of the cap to the kind of prosperity gospel thing, which, as you've said there, Peter, is a load of nonsense and he's very reductive.
Yeah, absolutely. Jane, please.
I feel like I'm getting quite tired just because this is so draining. Wendy is an example of a woman who's speaking with authority, and she is, she's going for it, but it's literally the only thing I can say that is positive about this is, it's great to see a woman standing up there and speaking, with confidence. this is the part that kills me. I spend all of my days trying to find spiritual connection with God, and I'm exhausted, and I struggle with the demands that having a son who has special needs, a learning disabled young adult. And I remember having had a complete breakdown because I was so worn trying to do everything myself. I remember going to a Relief Society midweek activity, one of the only 3 people who turned up, and that was including 2 of the Relief Society presidency. Well, we just all sat and read tales from the ensign about how much better we could all be doing. And I remember that my emotions were just completely switched off. I couldn't feel a damn thing, but I just remember tears like coming out. And I was so annoyed because I didn't want to feel like, I didn't want to be responding like that, because that isn't how it works. You know, tales of how, look at these women with cancer who still show up to church every week because even cancer doesn't get you a Sunday off church. Everything has to be better and harder and more exact and more obedient. And before you know it, we have members of the church. You know, I exist in a women's space, you know, so I'm particularly referencing the you know, amount of emotional labor that women have to perform in the home, exhausted because of the demands of trying to live a good life. No one's sinning, no one's doing anything wrong, but still at no point do you get to just speak to me about Jesus. Do you get to remind me that even when you feel like you're not enough, that Jesus is there to make up the difference? That, you know, that when I'm telling my kids that, you know, my learning disabled son, when he is hurting himself and lashing out, and when he hurts me, that I'm telling him that it's okay because he's not doing anything wrong, because that, you know, because Jesus loves him. Despite everything, that Jesus forgives you for stuff like that because he loves you. That's what the bloody gospel is. How hard is that? Can't we just teach love instead of perfection, please?
I wish we could.
Amen.
I wish they would. But instead, we're going to get another example of how great Russell M. Nelson is. Who's ready for that one? Oh boy, here we go.
Number 3, President Nelson finds joy in serving others. For the first 12 years of our marriage, we lived at an elevation higher than Salt Lake City, and in the winter it snowed a lot. We often measured the accumulation by feet. I well remember the Sunday when a brother in our ward came ashen-faced to me and said, "Oh, Sister Nelson, we're so embarrassed. We just learned that Elder Nelson does his own snow removal." I thanked him for his concern and added with a grin, "If you really want to help him, clear the neighbors' walks." Because after each storm, my husband would bundle up and spend hours removing the snow from all the sidewalks in our neighborhood. Also, each Monday throughout the year, after garbage pickup, he would roll each neighbor's large garbage bins from the road back up to their home. Some people had more than 2 bins. Several had long, sloping driveways. His simple but consistent neighborly gestures softened the heart of one woman who had spent decades showing, in word and in deed, that she was quite committed to not liking Latter-day Saints. Then, one Christmas, she left a loving note and a handmade item on our porch to thank him.
It's chat time again. And I know that Jane has got something on her phone. I almost am certain as to what it is. Do you need a little bit of time to find it? Have you got
just
it?
knew. No, you
No.
you could sense it. Your spider senses were tingling.
You may have sent it to me the other day, but sure.
Yeah, well, hat tip to the person who sent it. I'm not sure if she's okay with me sharing
Probably
her
don't dox her.
details, but yeah, let's not do that. No, this is. Did we notice that the bins were being rolled back up
Long
to their
sloping
homes?
driveways.
Okay, it's just, I mean, we've been sent photographs of what that actually looks like. There are no, hey, fact checking, Neil.
Yeah.
Yay!
I'm proud of you, Jane.
There are no steep driveways in that neighborhood. There are short driveways and grounds specifically graded to avoid that problem because it's meant for senior citizens. Big houses, but no garden, and maintenance is done by the homeowners.
And is this where they used to live? They don't live now.
That is my understanding. Is
All right.
that's where they were.
Do you want to show the picture
about.
then?
No.
Okay, fine. We won't do that.
I'll send it to you, and you can
Right.
you can share it because
Okay, I'll put it on my feed then.
I just think, like, you know, that's wonderful. But how many other people are out doing things like that? Do we get praised and worshipped for it? You know, my brother, who's not a member, he removed his name. You know, he was off work one time and he's down at my mum's shoveling all the neighbours' paths. Well done, but you don't hear him on the Channel 5 news getting praised. But it is that's what it seems to me. It's like, well done, you did. And I think, yeah, it's great serving people. I love serving people, but we don't need to shout about it. We're taught to do our things in secret, but yet they seem to get away with always shouting about it.
Mm-hmm. Do not your arms in public.
That's it.
But in private, yeah, exactly.
They shout about it all the time.
Yeah, Julian, please.
I'm trying to be positive. I think stories like that are good. I think they work on us, encourage us to be better people. I think that's good. You know, when we hear good examples of, people that do great things, it's shown psychologically to encourage us to want to do good and feel a great love for mankind and all stuff like that. But it's just weird when it's your husband. Do you know what I mean? So telling us, if you'd have told a story about a person that did this, and then we'll go, oh yeah, that's lovely. I'd like to be more like that person. But when it's you saying, check out my husband, this is what he does, it's just weird.
Yeah, it is a bit strange, isn't it? Check out my man, Peter, and then we'll move to the next.
I've seen the vacuuming picture as well.
Yeah, the vacuuming picture where it's not plugged in or switched on.
Yeah.
It's amazing. Peter, please, and then we'll move to the next shot.
And what is also there is the ever-present ulterior motive. Your service only counts if it converts somebody. There's it's not, and it's not, that's always the Mormon icing on the cake. It only counts if you actually work to convince someone to join the church or be nice to the Mormons. It's again part of this paranoid persecution complex. We're always being judged. All these people watching us, great and spacious building, and we've got to work hard to prove we're nice Christians and change their hearts. And it's just always there on the script. Nothing good works don't count in themselves. They have to result in more people joining the church or being reactivated, and that puts pressure on everyone.
It does, because everything has to have an outcome.
Yes, exactly.
Right. Well, let's hear more about how we can be like the prophet, not worry about whether he speaks as a man or a prophet. The one thing that actually really matters.
Number 4, President Nelson knows that the Lord loves effort. Therefore, he requires it of himself and admires it in others. He admires those who pay the price to accomplish something difficult, including those who, due to chronic and life-threatening illnesses, have to work diligently every day with their health routine just to stay alive. Those who diligently search scriptures to find answers to their sincere questions. Those who vigorously work with the Lord and, when appropriate, their priesthood leaders, to overcome weaknesses, increase their self-mastery, and truly repent of their sins so they can receive all the blessings God has for them. And he admires those who rigorously wrestle with a problem, generating possible solutions before approaching someone else for help. President Nelson celebrates excellence and will often say, I love watching an expert at work. When a service professional comes to our home to assist us, President Nelson cannot restrain himself from leaning into their field of operation to observe their work. While the plumber, electrician, or computer specialist may think President Nelson is adjudicating their work, he is actually celebrating their skills and efforts.
He's not judging you. He's not judging you. He's just celebrating your skills and efforts.
With leaning in.
Yeah, some of you look uncomfortable. Julian, please.
I've got nothing to say about that because I switched off.
I
Wasn't
think there's
really
not really much to say. Should we just move on to the
wasn't
next
really
clip?
listening. Yeah.
Yeah, let's just move on
I
to the
think it
next one.
speaks for itself.
Yeah, I think
Earn
it
your
does.
salvation. A
Yes,
religion that
exactly.
works.
Yeah, in a nutshell.
Number 5. President Nelson never delays. He never puts off anything. I learned this early in our marriage when, as we would be drifting off to sleep, I would think of something I needed his help with and softly mention it to him as something we might do on the weekend. "What's wrong with right now?" would be his enthusiastic response, and suddenly we would be in the garage looking for a hammer and nail to hang a picture. Therefore, it's no surprise to me that in the last 4 years, a multitude of important adjustments have been made to church policies and procedures. What's wrong with now is his response when he knows that an adjustment in policy or procedure is the Lord's will. He often says, "I'm on call 24 hours a day with the Lord," and he is quick to respond to the Lord's instructions. Therefore, when people thank him for an adjustment that blessed their lives, he turns to me after they walk away and says, "I was only following instructions from the Lord. I do know how to follow instructions."
Right. Apart from some of the horrific mental images some of that conjured, because that woman does not do phrasing well. We've learned this by now. We're at a point where she's essentially saying that, oh, he doesn't delay. He jumps right on changes to policy that need to be made. Doesn't matter if he's been holding on to a grudge for 30 years. He'll jump right on it the moment he becomes prophet. He doesn't like delay so much that he became prophet before he could even put it to a vote of the people. PD, you look like you want to say something. Please jump in.
I was just going to say, he becomes prophet when he's that old that he has to do everything straight away because he never knows when he might slip up and the Lord will take him.
Take him away.
The Lord will take him away. It's a true story. Exactly.
And all they've
Julian.
got is policy and procedure. Yeah, sorry.
Yeah, Julian. And then I'll pull you in, Peter.
2 points. One really quick one. As soon as she says, "Prophet never delays," prophet never delays. Question mark after that. It's just nonsense, isn't it? It's nonsense. I hate when people say stuff like that. Of course he does, because he's a human being. He's a fallible human being. Oh no, sorry, he's not. He's a. That's ridiculous. And the other thing is, do you know what I love? One of the things that I really like about early church history and about Joseph Smith. I know there are lots of things that we could say that we don't like about Joseph Smith. One thing I really like about him is he didn't delay. He read about stuff and he said, "Right, let's do it." Right, it talks about temples. Let's build a temple. He talks about a new Jerusalem. We're gonna do it. We're gonna, create this new Jerusalem. And I think that's really good, that attitude. Whereas I think we're now kind of just waiting to die. And I don't know whether Emma ever gave a talk like this. But if she was gonna kind of big Joseph up, there's a lot of things that she could probably say. Joe, he's great. He's he created this. Well, he translated this ancient text, and he's brought forth lots of other inspired scripture. He's received this revelation and this revelation. He's restored this doctrine, and he's done this, and we built temples and a city, and he's been mayor and all of these things. Yeah, great. So what's he done? He's given us a new logo. He's changed the name of the Mormon Tabernacle Choir to something that's just ridiculous and no one will remember, and we'll always keep calling them the Mormon Tabernacle Choir. He tweaked some policies.
Yeah,
again, it should all of these things that they should be self-evident, shouldn't they? You'd expect them to be self-evident, and they're not.
Joseph Smith wouldn't have needed a hype woman. He wouldn't have needed Emma to do that, because he said, "I boast that no man ever did such work as I. The followers of Jesus ran away from him, but the Latter-day Saints never ran away from me yet."
Yeah,
so, Joseph Smith
himself.
knew. He knew.
He did the boast himself. But you understand my point. It's like,
yeah.
if we ever... it's just this idea that it shouldn't need bigging up. It shouldn't. It should be self-evident. You know, how could you, if you took this seriously, right, and you said to a friend, a non-member friend, and this is probably why we never did it because we all knew it kind of deep down. But you know, you've got a non-member friend. You said, right, General Conference is a prophet of God. He is a spokesman for God. This man is just, you know, amazing. What? Oh, okay, right. That's interesting. What did he tell you? Take your vitamins.
Yeah.
Nothing there. There's nothing there.
Peter, then PD.
So this is all they got. He has no imagination. People who get into these higher levels of leadership in the church, the system they have, are there specifically because they don't think outside the box. They never think of anything new or visionary or of the future. They don't see things no one else has seen before. And they think they're doing a wondrous job just by tweaking some rules in a handbook. And they make it so important. One of the rules he did tweak was it is now an apostasy offense to oppose policies of the church, not just doctrines and leaders.
I oppose.
The fig leaf to deal with all the nonsense and the mistakes of previous leaders used to be framed as that was just a policy, a temporary interpretation of doctrine, not a doctrine. But now you can't even object to any of the policies they have, which may change tomorrow. And he's announced in his last General Conference addresses that this journey of tweaking will be ongoing. They'll keep changing the temple endowment, even though Joseph Smith thought that's a definition of apostasy. They'll keep tweaking the ordinances, they'll tweak rules. And so it's saying that's going to keep changing, and we were discussing how they've now put that caveat on some of the early Ensign articles about patriarchy from the 1970s, saying, well, this obviously isn't what we teach now, but you need to sort of understand this was another time. So they got that one narrative going that, of course, you learn to do better and they were a bit crap in the past. But then he's saying prophets are always infallible, so they can't be crap in the past. And he's saying, but we will keep tweaking it. And they changed the wording of what women make covenants to in the temple with no explanation of what they mean by the new and everlasting covenant, which used to mean, well, they say new and everlasting covenant of marriage, which used to be polygamy. But so he'll break things, he'll gut the Salt Lake Temple, he'll stop the life endowment, so it's no longer experienced as it was meant to be as immersive theatre. He will destroy, he'll break, he'll tweak, but none of it is actually addressing the real needs and issues of the church. None of it is significant spiritually, and if it is, he doesn't explain it. So these people are there because they have no imagination, because they're totally loyal, and he declared his loyalty when he's quoting that interview with him when he was just a regional representative as a surgeon in the 1980s, and said, when I listen to prophets, that's where the question mark things comes from. I put an exclamation mark next to the name. I don't bother my head with whether they're speaking as a prophet or not, and working out whether they're speaking as a prophet or not. It's the only possible way to have a rational religion, the only way to make sense of all their contradictions, because you do have to sift. You have to pick out what's worth holding. And Jesus taught us to prove all things, hold fast to that which is good. That should be a legitimate process. These people, Wendy and her husband, are killing that process. They're saying it's not a thing. You just have to believe they're always infallible. Even how they live their lives in everyday life, you must watch carefully and model your life on literally everything they do.
Which is why we've got 5 examples going on to 6 of this is the way my husband lives. Why don't you try modeling your life on him? Because that's what he did for the prophet before him. Look, that's where I got him. I'm just going to jump on to PD.
Not been teaching that.
Yeah. PD.
Okay. First of all, Julian, please stop evil speaking of the Lord's anointed. Angel has spoken. No, Julian, seriously, right? He's done more than that. You can now play a banjo in the chapel if it is fitting with the meeting. Yeah. You know, that's probably got to be the best thing that he's done. Being able to actually...
back.
Yeah. You know, so
The banjo players left long ago.
Yeah.
No one
I
said
actually
you can do that.
So,
I think it could be a conscious tactic to fly under the cult radar by just being incredibly boring.
yeah,
Kind
it's
of
bring a little
doesn't.
bit more color into the room.
Yeah.
Right. Natalie Clements is requesting that we hear from the bold guy, so let's let PD carry on.
Well, I was sorry, Natalie. I was letting the grown-ups speak, but how annoying must it be to be his wife? Because she mustn't get any sleep between all the picture hanging and sessions with God. Like, she must just be up and down all night. So yeah, poor Wendy. I feel for her, and yeah, the bold guy has spoken. I will stop.
I know
there.
you want to move on, but if I could just say
fine.
quickly,
Yeah.
I was just thinking, as I'm kind of processing a lot of this, all the points about how wonderful her husband is, and again for me, a lot of my, I don't want to say issues, but things that I've struggled with, that feeling I always come back to of not being enough, not doing enough, and I can't help but cringe again, again, all these things, and this is just my opinion. I'm not saying this is how anyone else would feel. But again, it comes back to that pressure of, am I enough? Am I delaying? Am I, doing all these things? How wonderful, again, going back to what you said, I can't remember who it was said earlier, about why are we trying to say, look at the prophet, look what he does, he's wonderful. Why is it not Jesus?
Well, because
but I just feel that pressure again for a lot of people. There'll be people who'll be sitting thinking, "Oh, this is great," But for me, I would be sitting there thinking, "I'm not good enough. I need to be doing better. I need to not delay if I've got some, this whole thing like when you hear the Spirit act on it immediately, And I'm like, I don't ever feel that. Like, I just think it puts that whole pressure on people again to be better, to be enough.
But observe when you go to church and you hear a woman speak, when you hear a woman delivering a talk, how often do you hear them referring to their husband, their priest holder husband? If you have a priest holder husband, bloody hell, you hear a lot about it. Women are trained in doing that, and Wendy's dialed it up to 11.
Amen.
Absolutely. Right, well, let's hear. I think this is her final example of things that we can learn from her hubby.
Oh, I could tell you so many more inspiring glimpses into President Nelson's heart, including his devotion to avoid contention, his joy as he includes his brethren in temple dedications, his respect for the power of words, which he carefully uses to love and lift others, and his insatiable focus on the future. He is always looking forward, and he is always looking up. Now, where will following the prophets lead you? As you follow the prophets, your love for your Heavenly Father and Jesus Christ will grow, as will your desire to keep your covenants with them. Your ability to discern between what is true and what is not will increase. You will long to be in the temple more than ever before, because you love whose house it is, and who teaches you supernal truths there. My dear brothers and sisters of Europe, the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints is the Lord's church. It is called by his name because it is his church. Everything in his church belongs to Jesus Christ. Covenants and ordinances are his. Priesthood power is his power, and the prophets are his prophets. In the name of Jesus Christ, amen.
There we
I
are.
can't even say amen to that.
Julian, please.
I thought that at the end there we've got a really interesting kind of return to the Emperor's New Clothes thing when she talks about the temple. This idea of when we visit the temple, we'll feel a closeness to God, and that we'll learn supernal truths there. If that's not Emperor's New Clothes, then I don't know what it is, because how many? I mean, this is speaking as someone that actually I quite enjoyed the temple, but how many people feel awful at the temple, just don't enjoy it at all, and come away confused, not not filled with supernal truth. Sadly, of course, the rhetoric there would be, well, that's because you're not going there with the right attitude. If you were just, again, we're not good enough. The temple's amazing. We're just not good enough. But yeah, it's a nice kind of return to the Emperor's New Clothes thing.
There you go, PD.
But now that she's finished, can I just say how taken aback I was when someone shared the photo of behind the scenes of what is going on here, and how that reminded me of the Emperor's New Clothes, and that we've gone from being the church who meets in chapels, these humble chapels. I genuinely thought when I was watching this, wow, they've gone to a really nice European chapel somewhere with a nice stone background, and they're speaking to a congregation. But it's not. It's a set somewhere with studio lighting, big old. It's almost like a Good Morning news channel or something like that. And it was just, I felt slightly hurt because it was just a setup. It was fake, and we know it is. But they've gone full bore on it now. It's almost like televangelism.
The highlights, and that's fake.
Yeah. Yes. Sorry.
No, it's a great point. And what I'll do is I'll share that picture on my social media afterwards so people can see it. I tried showing it on my phone. It wouldn't quite show up. But it's a set. It's just a set. It's a film set. There's lights, cameras, everything. And it's just 3 walls. The 4th wall, as we always talk about in television and all that sort of stuff, the 4th wall is not there. Sorry, does someone else have a hand up? Because I think what we're going to do, if not, is we'll move to closing thoughts, 30 seconds each. Just to round up whatever this was we've just listened to. Because that's it. Her talk is immortalized on the internet now. That is it. It's not going anywhere. So, we'll start, I'll tell you what, we'll start with Alana, then Peter, then Jane, then Julian, then PD. We'll go 30 seconds, roundup of what you just heard. Go for it.
I think for the first time I'm kind of speechless. I don't know. I keep saying I just because I can't find the words, which is not like me. I just can't understand why they think that was good and helpful to people. I cringed for most of it. I don't know what they were trying to achieve. Again, I keep coming back to that focus. We keep talking about the British Rescue. Again, I feel it's a bit, for me, about that control, almost trying to put it into your brain. Listen, exactness, all these words that you're taught growing up to kind of almost program your brain. I know not everyone has that thinking.
Yeah.
But I just think if I had to say anything to them, I'm like, come on, do better. You profess to be people of God, and I don't imagine that the God I believe in would think that was okay. I think just do better. Do better.
Thank you. Peter, 30 seconds.
Yeah, dream on. They are spiraling. They are drunk on power and privilege and wealth. And I'm so glad we've got these talks because they've revealed their true nature. They've taken all the very worst things in modern Mormonism and celebrated them as positives. The authoritarianism, the leader worship, the distrust of any other sources of information that could give us knowledge. When the founders of our religion said, bring all knowledge in wherever it comes from. They're literally teaching the opposite of the restored gospel of Jesus Christ, not continuing that restoration. They are setting a flamethrower to it, and they've made this more obvious than we dreamed possible even. She spoke with authority, which was interesting. She does speak with authority, but she's batshit crazy. And this is a lesson. It's not enough just to be the right demographic. It's not enough to be a woman with a voice. You have to not be a religious fundamentalist nut job with a voice. And the only thing I see ultimately is the answer is not waiting for a liberal prophet or a nice woman to get into position. It is democracy. The collective wisdom and knowledge of the entire membership should be applied to filter everything they do and say and declare to be truth. And the Doctrine and Covenants Institute manual says that's what the law of common consent is. If we did that, we'd never have a talk like that because it's barking mad and people would have told them. And finally, really just she's going to be thrown down the memory hole. As soon as he dies, we will never hear from Wendy again. Thank goodness, I've heard enough. She will be gone because her role will be the grieving widow, and she'll be forgotten really quickly. They just can't keep doing this. And Rusty married his greatest fan. And you don't need any depth of amateur psychology to know that the role of a wife is to tell her husband, you're not all that every morning, to remind him that he's not that special, to keep him humble. When you marry your greatest fan who wasn't there going through the laundry and the children and all of that with you, you've got a massive ego boost coming at you. She has, I know it's unfair to say she hasn't had children, but she's not had life experiences other people have, and that will keep your husband humble because you're going to keep him humble. So this whole dynamic is fascinating. It's playing out in front of us. It's obvious. It's blatant. It couldn't be run healthy if you were going to write a script for Lady Macbeth like dysfunctional fandom, pampering an ego that's already broken, with power and drunk with it. And we're just seeing this, and this is why the people who really run the church have made sure that this went down the memory hole in 24 hours.
There you go. But we did not let it happen, because we are the Brit Vengers, and this is what we do. Cheers, Peter. Thank you. Jane.
Okay. Because I can say this, because you all know that I love you, I'm just going to say that the one thing missing from the list at the start there was the Lady Macbeth comparison. So I completely want to push back against that type of idea. I think we will hear from Wendy. I think, Wendy's work, as much as we might all totally hate it as an author, as a speaker, Wendy's hitting her stride. It's great to see a woman hitting her stride in her 60s, as much as I might fundamentally disagree with most of the things, if not all of the things that she's saying. It's great to see women stepping up and creating a role for themselves that hasn't really existed before. So yeah, blooming good on you, Hen. What I do have a problem with, though, is the fact that it's Wendy. We have a Relief Society presidency for the first time ever who are, they are on it. They are inclusive. They are quite radical in some of the things that they're doing. Sharon Eubank is a queen. Jane Bingham, Sister Alberto. I mean, the stuff that they're sharing on Facebook, the things they're rolling their sleeves up and they're listening. They are serving. They're showing us how to do it. And Wendy could learn so much from them, and it's almost sort of taken away from this amazing direction that women in the church could be going in by dragging us back to, it's not even the 50s, it's back to sort of the 1850s. So yeah, thanks. I'm happy for your success, but also, please pass the mic over to the women who have been called and set apart and know what they're doing.
Oh, thank you, Jane. Julian.
I think it's really important talk. I'm grateful that we were able to do this because I think it is important. I think this is going to go down in history as a bit of a cult classic. I just hope. I just hope. I'm quite optimistic in this hope that it was so bad that anybody, especially a younger generation, that will hear that will just go, well, that just says it all. They could see straight through that. I hope, I really do, and also, not just that kind of anti-critical thinking, anti-intellectual element to it, but also the negativity. The world is statistically, the world has never been better than it is right now. Regardless of what they say, and that's an important message. That's a real message of hope. It'd be lovely to hear that. I agree that. Sorry, I'm going on too long. That's over 30 seconds.
No, that's fine.
Yeah. No, that's it. That's it. It just let's be a bit more positive. The media is a problem because it focuses on negative things and gives us a bit of a skewed worldview. But don't follow that on by scaremongery and trying to make out that everyone's going around sinning when like it's not everyone. It's just PD.
Well, Julian, I really need to make this point. 700 million people. There's millions of people, right? Millions of people have been lifted out of abject poverty since the year 2000. Millions. The world is improving at a rapid rate. And we need to remember that. Like you said, the world is better.
Yeah.
PD.
Sorry. No. I'm going to say one more thing, especially when the world is moving in the right direction and he's improving in so many ways. And $140 billion would do a lot to improve that as well.
Yes, absolutely. Absolutely. PD.
Okay, with the Super Bowl coming up, I think I'll use this one. The church for years have been playing... Sorry, other sheep just made me laugh. The church for years have been playing a running, a passing game, and they've had to resort to special teams. Okay, they've pivoted, and you can see it in general conferences. It's all Rusty love, okay? But what they're actually doing is they are setting the ultimate example for all of us. Because as Wendy stands there and says, do this, be like this, do this, the more people you see do something, the more you will mirror that behavior. And in general conference, when you see all the apostles stand up and speak about the dear prophet, when you see their wives stand up and speak about their dear husbands, what they're doing is they are putting together a behavioral pattern for all of us to follow. From primary, follow the prophet. And that's what I see. They don't have a special message. They don't talk about doctrine anymore because they're afraid to say something wrong, because they know people will jump on it straight away. They'll always hang apologists out to dry. They'll always throw the last guy under the bus, but follow the prophet. And that's all we're going to get till kingdom come. Just follow the prophet. And I think that's what it is tonight. As sycophantic as it might seem, that's what they want. They want all roads to lead to Rusty, and to hell with anyone past him, because he's the only one that matters. And I think that's my 2 penny.
Thanks, PD. You've now got that song in my head. Thank you.
Sorry.
Oh, the prophet.
So here's what we'll do. I'm going to tell you exactly where to find these people. If you want to hear more stuff like this, check out Alana and Jane at 21st Century Saints on YouTube. Check out Peter Bleakley at Mormons of War on YouTube. Julian is just one half of a fantastic duo that is Laura and Julian Heath, who run Sunstone here in the UK. And then you've got the wonderful Priesthood Dispatches, who comes to you live from somewhere near Kolob on a Friday evening to chat about your wonderful Mormon experiences. Smash the like button if you enjoyed this. Subscribe. Make sure you keep supporting all the work we're doing, because without your support, we would struggle to do this. It is really quite something to be the people who can record this meeting, get it out there, and know that it is now on record. It can't disappear. And because of this, hopefully some people will be a little bit closer to understanding the way the church really is. Thank you very much, everyone. Have a wonderful evening, and we'll see you soon. Bye now.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye.